All right, and then I'm ready to start, yeah?
Yeah, you should be ready to go.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is the materials selection for K-5 libraries. I'm Beth Kovacic. I'm the LMC director at Dryden School in Arlington Heights, and I'm so glad you joined us. I've done a bunch of stuff, but most relevant to today, this is my 9th year as a librarian, my 7th year at Dryden in a K-5 building, and then I was 2 years in a K-8 building. And I want to share with you today how I think about the library collection and what should be in it. So first of all, your collection development policy guides everything. So we'll talk about what my policy looks like and what you can do if you don't know where your policy is or you don't have one. And then the other things that I think about, like the curriculum content. What are your teachers teaching? How you can find professional resources and how they can help you decide what to purchase. How you can access your student voice and let your students tell you what they want from your library and what they would like to read. And then there are the things that we just put in because they're amazing and awesome and fun, and they get our kids excited about reading. So the first thing you probably should do is figure out what you actually have to start with. So how do you do that? Like, what's the state of your collection? You can do that just by talking with teachers informally. Hey, I know you do this research project. Do you have the materials that your students need to learn what you want them to learn through that process? Are the books too easy for them and they don't have enough information? Are the books that we have too hard for them, or they don't have nonfiction text features that they need to access the information? Asking kids. We do a lot of personalized learning in my building where kids can have dedicated time to learn about the things that they want to learn about. Do we have what they need for that? Do we have digital resources that help them access a broad range of information? And can they use it? Does it translate into other languages? Is it at a level where they can access the content? So that can be very informal. In just observing what's happening, talking to the people that use your library, and kind of filing that information away so you can think about it later. But also, you can do that more formally with collection analysis tools. So if you use Destiny, you probably have a Tidal Wave account with Follett. If you don't use Destiny, you still can have a Tidal Wave account. It's free to set up. But if you have Destiny, it's kind of nice because they're linked and you can send your whole collection to Tidal Wave. It'll give you an analysis. Almost everything is clickable. I'll show you in a minute an example of mine. And you can learn where you have age titles, or maybe you have a whole lot of books in this section, but not as many in this one. Or maybe you find out your collection overall is at too high of a reading level, or maybe not high enough. Maybe you're lacking at the high end. So a tidal wave analysis, Mackin does a similar thing. I've uploaded my collection to Mackin before. And Diverse Book Finder is another collection analysis tool. That one's a little bit different in that it's looking at the way that they've tagged books to report on how diverse your collection is and who's represented and maybe who's missing. I also use Destiny reports. There's a ton of information that you can get from running shelf lists or title lists, looking at your circulation stats, your publication dates to see if things are up to date, if you have, if they're circulating, if kids want to read the things that you have. And so you can use all those tools to get more formal data. So this is an example of my title report. On the top left, you can see kind of the overall collection statistics. I have 11,540 books with an average age of 2011, and that's 22.9 books per student. You can see the breakdown of print and digital and fiction and nonfiction. You can see in the Dewey Hundreds what how many titles I have. And if you click on anything that's blue, it'll show you what those books are, and you can look through the titles. And then it shows your collection by year. So if you notice, um, as you would expect from a date of 2011 average, I have lots of books in the 2010s, 2020s, 2000s, but I do have some that are really, really old. And you can click on that to see what they are. And they're often like um, books like these you see here on the right, like Lyle Lyle Crocodile or Ramona the Pest or The Giving Tree or How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Like they're not necessarily books that we want to weed, but they show up in those um, in surprising ways sometimes when you do the analysis. So when you start to look at selecting materials, the first thing you want to look at is your collection development policy. Like um, what does your policy, what does your district say about what you should have in your collection? What's the mission of your district and your library? What policies do you have to follow? And those guide everything, because if materials that you want to acquire don't meet the policies set out by your board and by your district, then they shouldn't be in your library. So it's important to find that. And I'll show you an example of mine in a second. If you don't have one, if nobody's done that, then you might want to draft one. You might want to consult with your admin, look to ISLE and ALA and Rails and neighboring districts for examples, and see what they're doing and how that lines up with what you think would be best for your district. And then how you implement the mission and the policies, like what's your criteria for selection? What tools will you use? What procedures do you have to follow to actually purchase, like all the nuts and bolts of what forms do you fill out, and how do you access your budget money? And your admin assistant usually is the best resource for that kind of stuff. So this is what our mission statement looks like in my district. And it says our media program is integral to high academic achievement, that we want to foster a culture of learning, that it's integrated and collaborative, that the media center is the hub of the school, and that we have all kinds of stuff for all kinds of readers. And then along with that, this is just the first part of our collection development policy. There's a bunch of stuff after this with like more specific kind of nuts and bolts guidelines. But the purpose of our collection is outlined right in our policy. So the materials will support, differentiate, and augment the curriculum, and that resources are available in various formats and reading levels, that they're well balanced, and that they include a wide array of peoples and cultures and ideas and information. So when you're looking to add materials to your library, right, our policy says we're going to have a diverse, broad library that meets the needs of all kinds of learners, that has all kinds of content. And so that's right in our policy. The next thing you want to consider is what content is in your curriculum. Like, what are your teachers teaching and how can you support them? It's also good to know before you start a really heavy weeding, like who uses what. So if you're new to a library, you might want to give it a little time before you get really aggressive with the weeding, because you don't want to toss something that, that teacher uses for their favorite project every year, and, they like this particular resource. So get to know your teachers. You might have some big research projects that they do. You might have teachers that require book reports. You might have teachers that require kids to read like the Wheel of Genres and try different things. Levels, you have to be kind of careful about. Levels should be an instructional tool, not really an independent reading choice tool for kids. But some districts don't follow best practice in the area. So you may have levels in your library. You might have kids coming to look for leveled materials. So teachers are a big help to find out what content you can help with. In my building, I meet with 2 academic teams each week. So I see every team every 3 weeks. And we check in to see, like, what do they have coming up? How can I help with instruction in the library? What kinds of resources do we need? And so I have dedicated time to meet with them. You might not have that, and so maybe that's not as formal. Maybe you catch people at the copy machine. Maybe they have a team meeting agenda that they can share the doc with you that you can see, which is what happens in another of our buildings. And so she can see what they're teaching. She doesn't have to go meet with them, and then she can provide resources that they need or check in to see if they need something specific when she sees a need that she can meet. Curriculum directors and documents are helpful. Your administration, your reading specialists are fantastic for this. You might look for things like a pacing guide, and I'll show you ours in a second. District curriculum documents, team meeting notes, standards-based report cards are how teachers are assessing. So do we have materials that support that content? And then your district and building strategic plans. So this is what it looks like for me. The document in the back here is our pacing guide for 4th grade. This is the extent of the document. So it's a very simple outline of the units that they're teaching each semester. And I can look at it and say, you're teaching personal narratives and writing. Let me pull some exemplars for you, or let me do a display, or maybe we're going to read one together in the library. And so I can see what content teachers will be working on, especially in science and social studies, and find ways that we can collaborate and support. And then this one in the front is from our strategic plan. And it addresses the social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students, and says that we're going to foster that sense of belonging. And so when I'm adding diverse books that represent our students, that broaden their horizons, I can say this district level document, right, supports me doing that and is guiding my collection development. So your district level documents can be really important. So now that you have an idea of the types of books that you need, you're going to consult your professional resources to help you find books that match. And so we can do that in lots of ways. We can start with School Library Journal and Book List and look to those professional reviews. And you want to be careful to use professional reviews as your resources and not things that are written by just the average consumer. You want librarians and professionals who see lots of books and can compare them and evaluate them with that professional lens. So where do you find these reviews? It can be expensive to subscribe to all this stuff, right? And you might not have that money in your budget. And I don't think you should spend your personal money on school things to do your job. And so Tidal Wave and Novelist K8 are your friend here. So when you have a Tidal Wave account, which is free, you can see all of the reviews for a book. So this is for We Don't Eat Our Classmates. And you can see on the left here in Tidal Wave, there are 6 professional reviews for that book. It has a recommended age range. It tells us when they reviewed it. We can see the full text of all of those reviews. And I always like School Journal because they often have like a teaching lens. So a lot of the other reviewers say, oh, this book is so much fun. Your kids will love it. But School Library Journal says, here's the teachable lesson for kids in this book, and helps them understand that social emotional learning or a way that maybe it fits into the curriculum. And they talk about it in a way that a lot of times the other reviews don't. So I always like to see what they have to say. And they often have a verdict in the School Library Journals for like what kind of collection might want to add this book or resource. So they might say, oh, this book is okay. It has some good information. It's good for collections where your readers want a lot of this type of book. But if that's not popular in your library, then maybe you would take a pass. So I like the kind of way they frame their evaluation of books. Novelist K8 is really cool for finding resources because you can search for books in ways that no other tool really lets you. So you can get really very specific when you're looking for titles for read-alike for kids or for adding to your collection. I access it through my public library, but it's also part of the new Illinois State Library database package that you can access for free. So if those are two ways that you can access Novelist K-8, and it's a great resource too. I use it a lot. The next area is student voice. Like, how can your students give you feedback on what they want to read? You can do this in lots of ways. I have them stick Post-it notes on my door, and then when the Post-it notes are gone, they know I'm working on a book order, and then I put them back up under a heading that says like, oh, I ordered this, or we already have this, come see me and I'll give it to you, or not at this time. So it's a two-way door. I give them feedback on the requests that they make of me. So you can use any kind of a suggestion box. You can use a Google form. That's a popular option. Sometimes I pull focus groups, like I needed to buy new sports books, and I know some very popular sports figures, but I didn't really know who my kids wanted to read about. And so I took a bunch of book catalogs to indoor recess when they had to be inside at lunch one day, down to the 5th graders. And I said, hey, what kind of books should I get? Do you want to read about teams or individual players or sports records or how to play the sport? Like, what kind of things do you want? And they circled a bunch of stuff, and I talked with them, and I said, okay, make me a list. You have $500 to spend. And they learned very quickly how expensive books are and that they had to be a little selective. But I got really good feedback from them on what they wanted to see. I had 2nd graders rate our beginning chapter book series. Would you read this? Would you not read this? Rate it from 1 to 5. And we just did a book pass. And so I brought in some series that I didn't own to mix into the book pass to see if that was stuff that they would like. So you can have all kinds of input from the kids in different committees or classroom activities, or a way for them to communicate with you. Also track your student requests. If all your kindergartners want unicorn books and they've read every one that you have, then you probably need some more unicorn books or train books or dinosaurs or whatever it is. And then use your circulation data to guide you. So if they're checking out a lot of something, maybe you need more of that something. And if they're not checking out something, maybe you need to promote it or freshen it up or update it. So the data is just a starting point, and then you have to think about why is it like that? What is this trying to tell me in the context of my students? And then weeding for condition. If you're weeding a series and all the books are just like torn up and gross and falling apart, either they're really old and no one's checked them out in a while, or they're new and falling apart and they love them and you need new ones. So condition can be an indicator too. And then you always want to buy the books that they love, that they're going to read and be happy about, that make them laugh, that touch their hearts, that make them feel seen, and books that will inspire them to keep reading and learning and be creative. And then lastly, I tacked on a few more resources for you to look at: the ISAIL standards, of course, and the ISB standards for content. I also find the Next Gen Science standards really helpful. A book that I recommended recently after I read it this summer is The Common Sense Guide to Your Classroom Library by Colby Sharp and Donalyn Miller. Its target is classroom libraries, but it talks about thinking about your community of readers and thinking about books in this very similar way to the way I think about them. It's not very expensive. It's not very long. It's an easy read. I interlibrary loaned it through my public library. And so if this is something you're really thinking about, it's another great resource. And I think is very accessible and easy to read. Last year's material selection session of this conference was awesome. I watched it after I kind of put together my outline, and they talk about a lot of the nuts and bolts of purchasing. where I think I kind of talked more about like how I think about the collection as a whole. So it's a really nice companion. If you didn't attend that session last year, you might want to watch it. And then a link to the new statewide e-resource package, which includes Novelist and so many other things that you can use to add digital resources to your library. And that's it. Thank you for coming to my session. Thanks for working in a library, and thanks for supporting your readers. I'm happy to take emails even after the session. I will drop my link in the chat for my presentation for you. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks so much, Beth. Someone did have a question. Hope said, any tips on advertising your collection to teachers? Our kids love the library, but teachers seldom see it, so I have a hard time sharing resources.
When I get a new order, sometimes I'll take a picture of it and I'll send it to teachers. If I buy something that connects with their curriculum, I might take it to a team meeting or show them when they bring their class, like, hey, we got this new stuff. Our fifth graders, like all our civic stuff was really old, like all of our books about Congress people and how the government works. They all had, big, mustaches and mutton chops and, big lapel suits. And so when I updated all of those, I said, hey, I know you're teaching about, this and that and the other. I updated all of these books and I made a display and I send them a picture, and so they can connect. So just kind of sharing the same way you would share with the kids, like book talk. Hey, I got this cool thing. Is one. I don't like to do a newsletter because that feels like a lot of pressure, but I'll send them random stuff.
Nice. And then someone asked for the link for the state database package, which is, I shared a link about training sessions and the contact, and then it's in your presentation as well.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see.
Let's see
if this link will work. It should be a public link for Canva, so I think that will should work for you guys. All right. Any other questions, Jessica, you think would be good for the group?
Any favorites for transitioning from graphic novels to chapter books?
I'm a big graphic novel fan, so I do a lot of displays, like if you like this, try this, because they tend to, they hit the wall because they've read them all. So we do a lot of like, if you like, read this and displays, especially for our award books, because they're really popular and always checked out. We do like TV ads. We have a big TV in the library, and so I make some kind of book commercials, we call them, which is just like a bunch of book covers that we have around a theme. And so I don't really try to encourage them to make that shift because there are graphic novels at all levels, but we do always talk about reading broadly and trying new things. So we just try to do that through displays and things like that.
Nice. And then how do you balance the electronic resources you add versus the physical books you add?
I mean, sometimes it's cheaper to access a digital resource. So, for example, I just ordered a new country series, which is like $1,100. And I think it will do most of what they need for their project. But also an Epic is another companion series that I think has some of the other types of information that they need and hits some different things. So we'll use those together. My teachers tend to prefer that they start with print resources. And so we usually try to start with that.
Nice. And then if you can share your contact information in the chat.
Sure.
Yeah. Somebody also said, maybe I missed it, but what if you don't have a collection development policy?
So you can look for some samples and start to draft one, see what the districts nearby are doing, look at ALA for model policies, and then talk with your admin.
Yeah, I even think Trisha, in the general chat here, if you want to say, I'm at a school that's about this size, a little bit about your school, and ask for sample policies, collection development policies, I'm sure people would be happy to share with you. Well, thank you, Beth, so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining the session today. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of the day.